I'm very frustrated by the Americans and frankly by people in other countries who are like, you cannot negotiate with the Iranians. Well, then what is your proposal to get people to stop shooting at ships in the Strait of Hormuz? You can bomb them. You can take away their radar. You can take away some of their drones and some of their missiles, but it's just too easy to fire at ships in the straits. So you've got to actually be willing to talk and to try to figure out the problem.
So JD Vance was on Joe Rogan's show today, and Adam, we're going to talk a little bit more later and show you more clips about how he talked about Israel's influence in America, which was really interesting, and what Rogan said was really interesting. But first, right there in that clip, he's basically saying we can't reopen the strait. It's too easy for Iran to close the Strait of Hormuz with simple drones. Meanwhile, Trump is saying, oh, we own the Strait of Hormuz and we're the guardians of the strait. So which one is it?
He's basically laying out what we've all been saying for months, and that's that Iran is able to wage asymmetric warfare on the United States by closing down the strait whenever they want. I think that if we looked at it, the United States does have a stronger military than Iran and most countries in the world because we fund the hell out of it, but Iran doesn't need to fight us militarily. If they can just close down the Strait of Hormuz, they're basically holding like a metaphorical gas nozzle to the head of every single person on the planet, saying that we can basically screw over Trump. We can make him lose the midterms. Because of that, Donald Trump has had to concede over and over and over when we had a deal prior. Listen, I don't think the Obama nuclear deal was perfect, but we didn't have to kill anybody to get it. We didn't have to deplete our military to get it. We didn't have to close down the Strait of Hormuz to get it. Now, Trump said at the beginning of this war, we would have unconditional surrender from Iran. I'm seeing the United States as the one who is unconditionally surrendering right now. We're surrendering control of the Strait of Hormuz. Not that we should have it, but I think that it should be sovereign in an ideal world. And Trump is now threatening a 20% surcharge on ships through the strait. He had to back off this idea, but I thought it was funny. The Iranian foreign minister used that to make a statement like, oh, the world should not deserve a 20% charge on the Strait of Hormuz. How about we just keep it down to 1 to 2%? So they are using Donald Trump's moral depravity to justify their own gripping of the Strait of Hormuz. And you can see that Trump is backed into a corner. JD Vance is laying out the exact situation that has led the United States into this endless war where Iran now has control over the strait. It's despicable and it's expensive for the average American.
I think Obama's deal with Iran was actually excellent and probably the very best thing he did in his term in office. Got rid of their any trace of a nuclear weapons program, really their entire nuclear program. The strait was open. We didn't have any of these problems, and we didn't have to go to war for it. So anything,
not a single missile fired.
Yeah, no missiles fired. Look, the right wing has done enormous propaganda against that deal, but a lot of them didn't realize back then. Now they're beginning to realize, oh, that wasn't even your propaganda, brother. That was Israel's propaganda. There was nothing wrong with that deal. It avoided war, and a lot of the people who voted for Trump thought that they were voting against war. Well, they've had a rude surprise. And so speaking of which, so don't get used to Vance being honest about our inability to win this war, because he's going to go back to dishonest immediately. Watch.
I think that the goal is certainly good, which is to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. And I think that there are obviously a lot of questions about how best to achieve that. There's both a short-term and a long-term piece of it. I think the short-term piece of it is effectively what's already been done, which is you destroy the nuclear sites and you destroy and eliminate the ability to rebuild the nuclear sites. I think there's a longer-term thing, which is where like a lot of the debate is focused on right now, which is that building a nuclear program is hard, but it's not impossible. And it's expensive, but it's actually not even that expensive if you look at, I mean, you could go on YouTube right now and find out how to build an atomic bomb. So part of our Iran policy, and this is where I get frustrated with the people who say you should never negotiate with Iran. Part of our Iran policy is like solving the long-term problem. That if we could create the sort of circumstance where Iran would commit not just to not have a nuclear weapon right now, but over the long term to not try to rebuild that capacity, like, yeah, I think that is a good and valuable thing.
Okay, what utter nonsense. So if we really cared about countries that were rogue states and out of control building nukes, how about North Korea? North Korea built 8 nukes while Donald Trump was in office the first time. He didn't do anything about it, because this isn't about nukes. And Iran never had a nuke, never came close to a nuke. And the Obama deal had ended any chance that they could possibly have a nuke. And Trump ripped it up so they could have a possibility of having a nuke, so they could have an excuse to attack Iran. There's no dispute over this. This is utter garbage. And then he says, oh, but we have to be in this war so that we prevent their ability to go on YouTube and figure out how to make an atomic bomb. How the hell are we gonna do that? Okay, and how many wars are we gonna get into to make sure people don't go on YouTube? So this is insanity, but more insanity from Vance here.
You have two elements within the Iranian system. You have, and you sometimes hear hawkish Americans say this, that they're all crazy people. They want to bring about, the 12th Imam and the apocalypse and all that stuff. Right. There are people in Iran who believe that. They're also pragmatists. You've got the crazy people, you've got the pragmatists. The first week after we signed the MOU, we get 20 million barrels a day of oil out of the Strait of Hormuz. That's what it was before the war. The price of oil comes way down. And there are elements, the hardliners in the Iranian system kind of freak out a little bit. They're like, oh, did we just give away our major leverage point? Screw nuclear weapons, we just gave away the so in this MOU. And so there was this kind of freak out in their system. So they shot at a couple ships, we responded. I think that's entirely appropriate, of course. If they're gonna shoot at ships, we are gonna shoot at the people who are shooting at the ships, or we're gonna destroy the facilities that they're using to shoot at ships. So that happens, okay, and then the Iranians are like, oh, no, fine, you're right. We shouldn't have been shooting at ships. So then they come back to the table, and there's a few more days of negotiation. And then the phase that they're in right now is the hardliners have really, really reacted strongly to all the oil that's coming out of the Strait of Hormuz. And they've basically said, we're gonna try to shut this thing down.
Yeah, they said no such thing. They didn't say, oh, we shouldn't have fired at the ships. Really? Give me the quote. I've read the Iranian press, the Israeli press, the American press. They never said that. You guys know I hate scams, especially the ones that target seniors. And Medicare, chock full of them. You've got commission-hungry brokers steering people toward whatever pays the broker the most, not what's best for you. Unfortunately, that's the whole game for so many of them. So here's who I actually trust. A company called Chapter. We did our homework on them. They're independent Medicare advisors, the only ones that compare every plan nationwide. The best plan for you is out there, and Chapter will help you find it. Folks who switched with Chapter last year saved an average of $1,100. Chapter's advisors are honest. They're not paid to just steer you to certain plans. They work for you, not big insurance. A guy on our team had his dad call. Turned out he was already on the right plan, and they just told him so. So they're not looking to push anything. Their entire focus is on finding what's right for you. It's free, it's under 20 minutes, so skip the scams and call Chapter today. Call 805-201-2275 for Medicare help you can trust. That's 805-201-2275. In fact, what he doesn't tell you is we had pre-approved channels to go through the Strait of Hormuz. We chose to go on non-pre-approved channels to instigate. But what were we instigating? We were trying to figure out, can we create a lane to go through the Strait of Hormuz without Iran's permission? That way we can go back into the war, try to do the regime change that Israel wants, try to destroy Iran without worrying about the Strait of Hormuz. So we've been trying to figure out using the peace negotiations as a way of reopening the strait physically, militarily, and that's why we've had the conflict that we've had recently. So in a little bit, we're gonna show you a bunch of clips where JD Vance talks about Israel's influence in American politics. That's super interesting. But before we go there, Adam, so look, this gets to the very core of the issue, right? Iran's biggest piece of leverage is closing up the strait. Earlier, Vance admits they could do that at any time. Now, it appears that Trump is saying, no, we got the strait and we used the peace negotiations as a ruse to figure out the lane that we could use to open it up and control it. We control it so much, we'd like to charge a 20% toll, as we were talking about earlier, right? So which one is it? And if it turns out that, as we suspect, that the original JD Vance statement is correct, that Iran could close it at any time, what are we doing here? Why are we bothering to have negotiations? If we're just gonna do what Israel wants, why don't we just get to it already? What's this nonsense about?
Like another point to add on to this is that the memorandum was dead on arrival. The memorandum had a specific clause that said Israel had to withdraw its troops from southern Lebanon, stop the invasion, and stop bombing Beirut. Israel did none of those things, which immediately undermined this deal that we had with Iran that was entirely fruitless. So it was DOA. And then Iran and the United States exchanged some blows in the Strait of Hormuz. Iran wasn't the one to originally break this memorandum. And also, if we were to concede JD Vance's framework right here, that there are hardliners that want war in Iran, and then people who want to negotiate in Iran and want peace, then I don't think it helps the negotiators that Donald Trump is basically just lying about what they're talking about. If the negotiators in Iran say that the Strait of Hormuz is under their control for the next 60 days, and then even beyond that, and then Donald Trump says the Strait of Hormuz is under our control, that'll just incentivize the hardliners that JD Vance is referring to continue. I mean, JD Vance is, I don't even want to concede that framework in the first place, but JD Vance is giving a self-defeating argument that basically says Trump is lying entirely. They like to call the Iranians liars who are terrorists and do this, but Trump is the one who has been lying through his teeth every step of the way during these negotiations, which undermines the negotiators on both sides and incentivizes this war to continue spiraling and spiraling and spiraling, which is what Israel wants, like you pointed out.
Yeah. Now, speaking of what Israel wants, let's go to JD Vance explaining how little or how much influence they have in America. Let's watch.
Why is Israel losing? Why is Israel losing American public opinion?
Well, the narrative is that Israel has a very disproportionate effect on American politics.
Yeah, I see that. I see that narrative. I mean, I actually think that they look. Do they try to influence American politics? Yes, but like I said earlier, a lot of other countries do. I think
to the extent that Israel does.
I think some are better at it than others. I think the Israelis are definitely more effective at it than most. But I wouldn't say that they're the only effective country by any means that tries to influence American politics. I just think you have to be self-aware about it. I mean, why wouldn't you? It's a country of 9 million people. We have 330 million people, and so of course they're going to try to persuade Americans. They're going to try to move Americans in one direction or another. I think that's just the nature of the beast.
Okay, so they're a little bit more effective than the other countries. Is it? It's just a little bit. They give to 94% of Congress. No other country is within a country mile, not even close. Like, oh, but Qatar and UAE gave money to you to think tanks. Yeah, I don't like that either. Great, I'm happy you're pointing it out. We pointed out that is microscopic compared to owning 94% of Congress and being the #1 lifetime donor to Donald Trump and Joe Biden and Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer and Mike Johnson and almost every major leader we've had in our lifetimes. This is a joke. He knows that Israel controls America 2,000 times more. That's probably, literally 2,000 is too little for whoever's second most on that list. I don't see Canada or the French buying up any of our Congress, let alone most of our Congress. Trying to pretend like it's within the range of normal is absurd. It's not. But I like Rogan's skepticism on it. Here's more.
But it's more than that. The concern is that they're spying on American politicians, that there's concerns about funding, there's concerns about influence, there's concerns about whether or not politicians are, whether they're aligned with Israel or whether they're aligned with the United States first.
Well, there's certainly, like, I definitely get those concerns, but my sense is that the way that all foreign influence works in the United States is people try to manipulate American public opinion, and then from manipulating a public opinion, they try to get the outcomes that they want. I mean, this thing is a very good example of this. So, like, we know, I'm telling you, beyond a reasonable doubt, we know that the negotiation strategy that the president has asked us to pursue, and again, with limitations, like when the Iranians hit ships, the president has been willing to knock the hell out of the Iranians in response. This is not just a negotiation. It's negotiation, it's military, it's all these things. But I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that there have been people within the Israeli government who are trying to, like, actually shift us away from that policy because they want to continue the military campaign.
And there's at least one upside to this interview, which is Vance admitting these things that is obvious to the rest of us, but like mainstream media never, ever talks about it. And in fact, if you say that Israel is trying to influence our politicians to get what they want, and that we went to this war because of Israel. They go, anti-Semite, destroy them. No. You guys are all liars. JD Vance even accidentally admitted it there, okay? And if you want to give him credit, say, okay, he openly admitted it there. Of course, they're pouring, as we did explain in the last segment that we did, they're pouring hundreds of millions of dollars into marketing and propaganda here in America. I mean, right now in Michigan, another topic we'll talk about later in the show, they've poured in $50 million into a Senate campaign to make sure that the senator from Michigan represents Israel instead of America. They want to make sure Abdul El-Sayed loses because he's for Americans. And Haley Stevens, they've already given over $20 million to her in the past. And here comes another $50 million. And she says that she went to Congress to serve Israel. So Ted Cruz said the same thing. Fetterman says the same thing. They just blatantly say it. I'm not for America, I'm for Israel. And then our press goes, I don't see it, I don't hear it, no way, I'm not gonna report on it. But last one here is Rogan pressing Vance on whether Israel pushed US into this war specifically.
Do you think that we would have started this war in Iran without the influence of Israel?
I think the president, completely separate from any influence from Israel, believes very strongly, and again, I agree with this, that Iran should not have a nuclear weapon.
Right,
and I
but
think he was
after
willing to do things.
Bombed them in June, right? That was the initial attack, right?
June of last year.
Yeah.
Midnight Hammer, yeah.
Right. Do you think he would have continued with the most recent campaign if it wasn't for the influence of Israel?
Yes, I do.
Really?
I do, yeah. Look,
Why
I mean,
do you think
I think, again, and I see this, and I see it even from people that are in our coalition, and this would be my flip side to the hawks who have been attacking me or the president mercilessly over negotiation. I would sort of turn this back on some of the doves or some of the realists who have been attacking the president of the United States. The idea that Donald Trump is being like blackmailed is crazy to me. Because again, I see the way that he makes decisions. I see the way that he processes this stuff. Like the idea that he picks up the phone with anybody and says, hey, like I'm gonna take orders from you. No, that's just not how Donald Trump operates.
Wait a minute, nobody said blackmailed. Adam, there's a lot of things that happen in those clips. One was the idea that Trump won't get influenced by anyone. He's said on tape, I do things for the Adelsons. I moved our embassy for the Adelsons. I'm doing this. I mean, he says it all the time. But wait, Rogan didn't say blackmailed. Nobody said blackmailed. Why did JD Vance talk about whether Trump was being blackmailed?
It's funny because in one breath, JD Vance says, yeah, of course, there's foreign influence campaigns being run in our politics. He's actually rather dismissive and flippant about it, which in my opinion is part of the problem. And then the next breath, he tries to dismiss the idea that Trump is subject to those same foreign influence campaigns. But it is kind of weird. He uses the word blackmail, which could be a Freudian slip or could be him trying to get ahead of something. At the end of the day, the reporting that I read and that I trust says that Benjamin Netanyahu tried to pitch this exact war to many presidents. And Trump was the one who was dumb enough to go into this war. He was the one president who thought that we could maybe get out unscathed. Maybe this would be Venezuela part 2. And since then, he has been dog walked by Benjamin Netanyahu throughout all of these negotiations because the Israelis aren't looking for a way out. Trump has the political incentive to find a way out. So JD Vance's dismissiveness about this foreign influence campaign coming from Israel is part of the problem. You said it well, like yes, other countries do want to influence the United States. Qatar, Russia absolutely does. Countries have incentives to influence us, but the problem is Israel has an outsized influence on our politicians in a surgical manner that makes our politicians take these wacky positions, or at the very least stay silent about genocide and settlements in the West Bank. I'm someone who likes to call out Russia's invasion of Ukraine with a lot of moral clarity. And I think you're a hypocrite if you call that out, but can't call out our supposed ally of Israel literally taking over land in the West Bank, evicting people from their homes, murdering people, and stealing that territory. The fact that every single Democratic politician is not out there sounding the alarm should be a tell that there is some sort of distortionary foreign influence effect on our politics. And JD Vance basically admits it, but tries to write it off in this weirdly dismissive tone. Like he doesn't take a hard stance, he just dismisses it entirely.
Yeah, so the 3 theories as to why Trump is doing what Israel wants in regards to Iran and let alone everything else is He's dumb and got manipulated into it. Plausible. He's corrupt and has gotten hundreds of millions of dollars from the Adelsons, let alone the rest of the Israeli lobby. Not just plausible, fact. And now JD Vance has introduced a third idea, which is that he's being blackmailed. Okay, by the way, it's not that he's not the first to think of it. I said that might be the case a little while back. And of course, when we say it, outrage, right? But apparently even the vice president thinks that might be an issue. So that's fascinating. Last question though, Adam. And this was not about Vance or Iran or our foreign policy. It's about Rogan. So Rogan's not known for much pushback, but he did as much pushback as Rogan does there. And he did say to him, hey, listen, didn't we knock out their nuclear facilities in the first go around? What are we doing this for? Wait, are you really saying that Israel doesn't have much influence or that we would have gotten in this war without it? So are you a little heartened to see the podcasters, kind of independent, largely independent podcasters like Rogan and others that voted for Trump, like Dave Smith, Tim Dillon, Theo Vaughn, all turn around and go, no, not buying it?
It's very heartening. And honestly, people aren't dumb. Americans aren't dumb. I know that a lot of people in my audience like to act like Joe Rogan is a lost cause or he's some far right guy. I don't even think that's the case. I think Joe Rogan represents the everyman, and a lot of people, well, a very rich everyman, but like he is just as impressionable as the average American is. And just like a lot of young dudes my age and UFC bros, he got caught up in all of this right-wing propaganda, but that doesn't mean he's entirely lost forever. I think that Joe Rogan can very clearly see that this administration lied about the Epstein files, is lying about the Iran war. You see comedians like Theo Vaughn coming out with a lot of moral clarity on Gaza, saying that it's a genocide. So when they have to sit across JD Vance and JD Vance is lying to their faces, they know that the vice president is lying. So again, Joe Rogan has been pushing a lot of conspiracy theories and a lot of right-wing slop. I'm not trying to defend him at all, but I think he really just represents a lot of Americans who are very, very worried about the current state of this war. And I think those questions that he was asking, I don't think it's some like plotted out questions that he had written down before. I think he's genuinely just asking, wait a minute, why is this foreign influence here? Why is it so obvious? Why is this war failing? Why are the files not being released? This represents a lot of people. Young dudes my age, young women my age are asking these exact same questions, and the administration can't keep running away from it. Trump can't keep just word vomiting away out of this mess. We are currently in a war that is spiraling. Gas prices are spiking, the files aren't being released, and this foreign influence is rapidly dying as newer generations realize what is happening.
Yeah, so I totally agree with your analysis on Rogan. He's more like the average guy being swayed in one direction and another, but at least he's keeping an open mind. And there was a theory that they were all MAGA cultists and they would all follow Donald Trump like sheep. But the good news has been that no, they haven't so far. It doesn't mean that they agree with everything we say, but it does mean that they have some independent judgment, and that's a relief for sure. Last thing for the audience is we've got a poll up on tyt.com. We're curious what you guys think. How much influence do you think Israel has over the American government? Because this is the biggest issue and one that they just discussed. A is none, B is small amount, D is huge amount, C is huge amount, and D is near complete control. So curious to see how that turns out. tyt.com to vote there. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.